On Friday the 15th of February, fans from all across went and sat down to watch the Indigenous vs the Māori All Stars game. Well, this included me and the rest of my family, and like so many others, I'm not Indigenous or Māori. But when watching it, it didn't mean a thing. Today, I'll be going through the entire history of the All-Star match, from when it started to the current day, and also followed by why I think the NRL need to pull the trigger, because the Indigenous All Stars versus the Māori All Stars could be the next state of origin. So, let's begin. Back in 2010, the NRL decided to have an All-Star game, something to compare to the NBA or the MLB. But looking back at it now, it wasn't the best idea, or just wasn't really executed very well. Now, instead of having it be the Indigenous All Stars versus the Māori All Stars, it was the Indigenous All Stars versus the NRL All Stars. So apparently, you've got the best players from the NRL versus the best players from the NRL who are Indigenous. There's a point where a player could play for both sides, and I feel like that's something in an All-Star game you don't want to be looking forward to. Obviously, in some All-Star games where there's drafts and that, it kind of makes sense. But this wasn't no draft. This is either a player deciding to pick if they want to play for the NRL All Stars or the Indigenous All Stars, which is just a bit weird. Unlike today, where the Māori All Stars versus the Indigenous All Stars, it's very separate, so you can't play for both. Players like Jared Wayne, Benji Marshall, Darren Lockyer, and Cam Smith all played for the NRL All Stars in that first game, so it definitely wasn't a bad team at all. But shockingly enough, and no hate to the Indigenous All Stars back in 2010, but the Indigenous All Stars won. They beat the NRL All Stars 16-12, with Wendell Saylor scoring the first try of the game. Up until 2016, they kept this going. With a run of the NRL All Stars winning, followed by the Indigenous All Stars winning some games, it was pretty back-to-back. But in 2016, they made it the Indigenous All Stars versus the World All Stars. Now, this is weird. The NRL All Stars versus the Indigenous All Stars, as I previously mentioned before, had a couple of problems. And now it was the best in the world versus the Indigenous All Stars. Obviously, it would be an entertaining game, but did just feel slightly unfair. It would make more sense, in my opinion, if they did the NRL All Stars versus the World All Stars. So you end up having some of the best Indigenous rugby league players go against, not to talk down to the people who played on that side, but the best in the world. It just felt a little unfair. As mentioned before, it has that same issue where if they're the best in the world and they're the best Indigenous player in the world, then who are they going to play for? The Indigenous All Stars, or are they going to play for the World All Stars? So it doesn't really get rid of that problem either. For someone who I figured out played in the game, which was pretty random, was Adam Reynolds, who played for the World All Stars. Now this only went for 2 years, 2016 and 2017. And with a couple year break, it came back in 2019. And instead of being the international, whatever, best in the world versus the Indigenous All Stars, it was the Māori All Stars versus the Indigenous All Stars. I think a really good thing about this game with being between the Māori and the Australian Indigenous side is that it really brings this next level of culture that you don't get from a normal New Zealand versus Australia international game. This was really about culture and pride in periods where you see, and still do see, a lot of racist stuff about Indigenous and black people all online. These guys went out there and put banger after banger, to quote Seamus exactly.
Banger after 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 banger,
showing this is no friendly like any other preseason friendly we still see today, but something different, something exciting, something that meant even more. From 2019 to 2026, which is this current year, the All Stars has played the same format every single year, which is perfect. There's a couple of things I'll go over later of what I would make a difference to kind of just make it a bit bigger, but they've kept it and it does work. It's just much better than any other previous All-Star I did. Like I mentioned in the intro, if you're Indigenous or Māori, or if you're not like me, you can just still get behind a team. Maybe it's based on players playing for that team. Maybe I support the Indigenous All Stars because Adokama plays there and he also plays for my club Parramatta Eels. Maybe it's because of nation. Maybe because you support Australia, Indigenous All Stars. If you're from New Zealand, Māori All Stars. So there's multiple ways you can just go back a team. And more importantly, you really see like culture just flow onto the pitch in these games, and sit back as you watch the next origin. Now, I've mentioned the next origin a lot today, so let me explain what I mean by saying the next origin. New South Wales vs Queensland is the biggest rivalry in rugby league. People watching it live at games, the support it brings, where it's played, people watching on TV, just all those factors. And it's never going to be beaten by any other rivalry in rugby league, or an attempt at an origin idea used in any other sport. But what I am saying is the Indigenous All Stars as the Māori All Stars game has so much potential to be maybe not as big as that, but up on the same level or just below it, which would be just amazing to see. If you watch a game every single year, it really just proves itself as being a great match to watch, which is just a great starting point. You want to have a good match if it wants to be popular like Origin. In the amount of views on YouTube highlights compared to Origin and this year's All Stars game, Origin is much lower than the NRL All Star. So here is what I would do to make the NRL All Stars game even better. So first of all, let's change the date. Make it slightly earlier in the year. So after the World Cup or Pacific Championships, it's the next big thing to look forward to. Not saying right after it, but in a similar place to where it is now, maybe a couple weeks beforehand. So it's not fighting minutes with pre-season games, and we all know in round 1 of pre-season and round 2, it just means absolutely nothing. It only means until round 3 where they actually start to bring their main players on. Next, make it 3 games exactly like Origin. It takes place all across 1 week, so it's not going on and on and on. It's a 1 week thing, so you'd start off with game 1 in an Oz location. I'm thinking maybe Allianz or something like that. Second place is in a neutral place, so you can do Papua New Guinea, you can do Fiji, you can do just maybe up in Queensland, you can do it in New Zealand. You can really switch and mix and match every single year. But I think something we've got to keep is that final game has to be in New Zealand. It's where it has been for the last couple of years, it's where it was this year. It just makes perfect sense to have it there, so I think that has to be the third game. But obviously if they did do this style every single year, change it up exactly like they do with Origin. Next, get rid of the quarters. Please NRL, get rid of them. Now for most people who decide, oh, I've got nothing to watch, let's watch this game, and they see quarters, which is the average NRL fan who has no idea about it, gets really confused. So just switch it up, make it just halves, even though it is basically halves, so it doesn't make too much of a difference. Make it halves, keep it halves, don't change it at all, doesn't matter on the year. Maybe if it's really, really hot, you can take an extra water break or something, but it just confuses people. Finally, add golden point. Currently, that's a massive problem at the moment because it is only 1 game. So if they didn't think about doing the whole thing, 3 games, just add some golden point, please. Because this year's one, it was a great game, great drama, but ended as a draw, which is just a little disappointing, to be honest. Obviously, you got the last year's winner who retains the title and all kind of that, but I would just love to see just a winner every single year. So just do unlimited golden point or even limited golden point, just either or. Also, without it being on an NRL pre-season like game day or game match, whatever you want to call it, like this year's one, which was on the same way as my Paramount Eels took on the Sharks, if they had more time, then they would be able to just keep going. But right after the game was the Eel Sharks, so it would have went over. I don't think that's probably one of the little things they could have probably put it a bit earlier. But yeah, if you continue with the plan that I said earlier, with the NRL preseason being later on, because you moved this game back, then it just works well. Because in my opinion, no one wants to see a draw. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I did put a lot of effort into it. Hopefully it does turn out quite well. Give me your thoughts on the All-Star game and the style of the game, and if any of my changes would be good, feel free to let me know any of your changes in the comments. I'd love to do like reacting to some of the comments or anything, to be honest. But yeah, I'm on the road to 1K. Please consider subscribing. Hopefully this shows I put a lot of effort into my videos. See you guys in the next one. Goodbye.